This is 5.5, mean and standard deviation of the binomial distribution. So first of all, we've kind of talked about mean and standard deviation of probability distributions. Now we're talking about binomial probability distributions. So notice something. All of these have N, P, and Q. Remember, every problem we dealt with binomial distributions in the previous sections, you have needed N, P, and Q. And that is true still. So some of these questions are going to be quite easy. Like example 1. It says find the mean and standard deviation when there are 30 trials and P equals 0.3. So 30 trials, P equals 0.3. So N equals 30. P equals 0.3. You do need to figure out Q, which remember P and Q always add up to 1, so it must be 0.7. There I have it. That's all I'm going to need. So my mean is N times P. So 30 times 0.3. And we get a mean of 9. Didn't ask for the variance, so I'm just going to skip straight to that standard deviation equation, which is the square root of NPQ, because NPQ is my variance, and the square root of variance is my standard deviation. So I get the square root of 30 times 0.3 times 0.7. So I get my standard deviation of 2.51 when you type that in. Then find the mean and standard deviation of rolling 20 dice and looking for 5s. All right, so now we got to think about it. So 20 dice, that's my N. That one's easy. P and Q takes a little bit of thinking, but hopefully you're familiar with this. We're looking for 5s. So I'm rolling dice and looking for 5s. Dice have 6 sides. One of them is a 5, so 1 out of 6, 5 out of 6. Done. Then I just have to use my equations. Mean equals N times P, which is 20 times 1/6. And so my mean is 3.33. And then my standard deviation, we just said, square root NPQ, which is the square root of 20 times 1/6 times 5/6, all under that square root. And we type that in, and we get our answer, 1.67. Please actually practice typing these in. Make sure you know how to get to these. So example 3, 6-question quiz with choices A, B, C, D, E, and looking for wrong answers. Find the mean and standard deviation. Explain. Okay, so we have to actually explain the meaning of these things so far. So let's look at our problems before. So it says find the mean and standard deviation of 30 trials. So our expected value is 9. We don't really know what that means. We don't have the context, so that one's hard to explain. Number 2, though, we do have a context. We're looking for 5. So if I roll 20 dice over and over and over and over again, I would expect, on average, 3.33, 3 1/3, to be a 5. So somewhere between 3 and 4 of them to be a 5 every time we roll 20 dice. Okay, that's the average that we would expect. It's not always going to happen, but it's the most likely event to occur, basically. Okay, and then we look at standard deviation. Remember, that's just how spread out the data is. Okay, so things closer to 0 are really close together. Things further away are really far apart. So find the mean and standard deviation. First, we need to define N, P, and Q. N equals 6, because we only have 6 questions this time. P and Q, we're looking for wrong answers. So if I have 5 answer choices, 4 of them are wrong and 1 of them is right. So 4/5 is my success in this case, because we're looking for wrong answers. We're trying to count how many wrong answers we expect. So that's my mean. My mean is N times P, which is 4.8. That's my mean. Okay, so what this means is, if you took this quiz, the 6-question quiz, and you just guessed, on average, you will miss 4.8 questions. Okay, remember what that means. It's an average. So that means if you took this quiz over and over and over and over again, if you just took it once, the most likely outcome for you to miss number of questions is 4.8. Okay, then I have my standard deviation. So it's the square root of n times p times q, and that's 0.98. And remember, this is how spread out. So we'll just say describes how spread out the data is. Since it's really close to 0, that means it's not very spread out at all. Example 4, given, it's a little typo, p of x, so it's giving you an equation for the probability. Notice our normal binomial equation, they just haven't defined x, basically. Okay, find the mean and standard deviation. So we need to pick out our n, p, and q from this. Okay, so we need to remember our normal equation. So the normal equation is p of x equals lowercase p to the power of x times lowercase q to the n minus x times ncx. Okay, so n is right there, so it's 20. P is right there, so 0.2, and then Q is right there, 0.8. So we can pick them out from the equation, and they're not describing anything. So we have our mean, which is 20 times 0.2, which is a mean of 4. We're not going to describe it because we don't have the context this time. But with the context, you will need to know how to describe. Okay, and then you have that, which means type that in and you get 1.79. Okay, still pretty small standard deviation. Not too far from 0. Example 5. Okay, now we're given a few things here. We want to find the mean and standard deviation, which the interesting thing is, they already gave a standard deviation, so that one's easy. Now I need to find the mean, though. Okay, so the mean, remember, is n times p. Well, they didn't give us n, and they didn't give us p, but we can figure out p. P equals 0.2, because p and q always add up to 1. So all I need is n. Well, remember our standard deviation formula? Square root of n, p, q. Let's plug in what we know. I know that standard deviation is 2. I know that I don't know n, so leave that. I know that p is 0.2, and I know that q is 0.8. Okay, so I'm going to square both sides. So we got to know how to go through the steps here. So we're going to square both sides. Get rid of that square root. So I'm left with 4 equals, I'm going to multiply these. 0.2 times 0.8 is 0.16. Then I just divide. Get n by itself. And I get my answer. 25 equals n. Okay. And so now we can actually find the answer. The mean is n times p. So my mean is 5. Done. So notice we're using a little bit of critical thinking and algebra skills to solve for things, which I don't want to leave you hanging here. And these are skills you need to know, so we're practicing them. All right, now they've given me mean and standard deviation. They want us to find n, p, and q. So we got to think. Looking at our two equations, mu equals n times p, sigma equals square root n p q. It's a little tough. All right, well, we know that, let's plug in what we know. We know the mean is 90. So n times p equals 90. We know the standard deviation is 3. Notice something here. Here is n times p. Here is n times p. What is n times p? 90. So 3 equals the square root of 90q. I can solve for q. So we will square both sides, get rid of the square root. Hopefully you know how to do that. 9 equals 90q. And then we divide by 90, and we have our answer. 0.1 is q. Well, if I have q, p is easy. They have to add up to 1. Once you have one of them, you also can easily find the other. So I have p and q. All I need now is n. So we'll plug in p into this equation to get n. So I just have to divide by 0.9, because those will simplify. We always do the same thing to both sides. And we get 100 equals n. And I have my three answers, n, p, and q, using a little algebra and understanding how to manipulate some equations to get to our actual value. Okay. So that is your final section in chapter 5, right? Your 3-sentence summary.